Hello, and welcome to a quick overview of the rises of dictators in Europe, 1920 to 1939. The period following World War I in Europe was very tumultuous. There's a lot of things happening, some for the better and many for the worst. By the end of this period, only Great Britain and France are the two reliably democratic nations. There are a few others who are somewhat democratic, but not to the same extent. But we are going to turn our attention to three other nations: Italy, the Soviet Union, and Germany. Italy in the 1920s is dominated by one man, and one man in particular, Benito Mussolini. He began the League of Combat, or the Fascio di Combattimento. This is the basis and the idea behind the governing philosophy of fascism, the philosophy that glorifies the state and the nation over all else. It was based on a strong central government. It has total control over many, if not all, aspects of ordinary daily life. It does not believe classes exist because unions that encourage identification as a working class person challenge the authority and the identification with the nation and the state. It takes its name and its sort of metaphorical identity from the ancient Roman Republic emblem of office and power, shown here on the right, the fasces, a group of sticks bound together. This was the emblem of power and authority in the ancient days of Rome. It is the effort by Mussolini to harken back to those glory days, but also the metaphorical idea that one stick can be broken, but a group of sticks bound together are unbreakable, just as a group of people bound together by the nation and by the government are also unbreakable. In 1922, he marched on Rome and he forced the King of Italy, Emmanuel III, to make him prime minister. After laws that gave him more and more power and authority, he became dictator, or the one all-powerful ruler over Italy during this time. He is known as Il Duce, or the leader. And one way he expands and maintains his control and power is through the use of a police force, who are very heavy-handed. They beat, they torture, they imprison, and often execute people who challenge his authority and power. He also has a widespread use of propaganda through immense control over the media. Marches, rallies, radio, movie, massive buildings. All these things are a way of demonstrating his power and control and encouraging the support of the people in him and in the nation and the state more broadly. This is done as well through youth groups. 2/3 of all youth are involved. These are camping outfits, they have crafts, they have activities, but also they have songs and pledges and marches in support of their leader and their nation. They also have a very traditional outlook. The job of men is to go to work and if needed, war. The job of women is to stay in the home, have children, and raise children to be loyal, patriotic members of a strong party, state, and nation. We can, to some extent, contrast this with contemporary events that are happening around the same time in the Soviet Union. It is during this time period, as there is a war happening within the country itself between the whites, who want to have some sort of democratic monarchy, and reds, who want to have a strong communist government, that more than 5 billion people die due to a massive famine through drought and cold as well. In the midst of this time period, Vladimir Lenin wins the war and he declares the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR. After he takes control and starts the new nation, agriculture does much better. This could be luck based on an improvement in the climate and the weather. There is more warm weather and more rain. Could also be stronger leadership through Lenin and the lack of war. Following this, Lenin institutes a new economic policy, or NEP. It's an effort to help the overall economy and the people of Russia. It's to some extent a relaxation of the strong control and the strong oversight of the broader economy. Peasants, if they had extra food, could sell it and turn a small profit. You could also open and start a private business as long as it was small. However, heavy industries, mining, manufacturing, banking, and corporations are still under strong government control. This new economic policy, this sort of like hybrid model of strong government control, but allowing some individual autonomy, is rolled back after the death of Lenin in 1924. One of the people involved in the earlier revolution was Joseph Stalin. He was widely viewed as sort of a thug, kind of a gangster type figure. But he was very good at organizing, at keeping people in line, and at keeping things under control. He takes control in part by exiling and or murdering the other people who had claims to power, mainly his chief rival, Leon Trotsky, who was the general of the armed forces during the Russian Revolution. He also sort of in part claims the mantle and the authority of his widely admired predecessor, Vladimir Lenin. Here is a picture of Lenin and Stalin bonding together in the latter days of the life of Lenin on a bench in a park. If this photo seems kind of weird to you, that's because it's fake. It was doctored after the fact, combining two separate pictures to serve as propaganda, showing the close bond and the alliance between Stalin and Lenin. They were colleagues, but it seems clear from other private letters and things that Lenin was not the biggest fan of Stalin, but after his death, Stalin takes the opportunity to kill, murder, and exile the opposition and claim the authority of Lenin. He ends the new economic policy and puts a 5-year plan into effect. This will become a pattern of a planned economy, saying in 5 years, these are our goals. This is different from capitalism, right? Strong control by the government planning the economy. It is a general movement from agriculture to industry. Agriculture to industry. An emphasis on manufacturing and machines, arming for the military, using oil and steel. It forces people to go to work in factories who maybe don't have the training background or interest in doing so. It is also very miserable for the workers themselves. As you can see here at the bottom, their wages, the money they were paid for doing the work, dropped by almost half. He also institutes the beginning of a great purge of any who oppose his rule. He does this in the provinces. There is a massive starvation in parts of the Ukraine. He takes grain grown there and has it brought into Russia, and that allows the people who grew it to largely starve. He sends people into exile in the vast part of Asian Russia called Siberia. He does this in part through prison labor camps called gulags, where people have to go if they were accused of being treacherous or challenging the authority, or perhaps they are communist or, not communist enough, or just they're causing problems. He also engages in mass executions. The third in our series of powerful men who are known as dictators is Adolf Hitler, born in 1889 in Austria. He is known as an extreme nationalist. He adopts a lot of the ideas and the tenets of Benito Mussolini, and he takes them even further. He is, of course, quite racist, as well as being anti-Semitic. He served as an army officer during World War I, and a lot of this spurs his hatred and his antagonism towards the other people who he views as opposing Germany. In 1919, after the war, he joined the Workers' Party, and by 1921, he has taken over the party and renamed it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi for short. This is known as a time of very tumultuous period in culture and economy and politics in Germany. This period is known as Weimar Germany because after World War I, they create a democratic constitution in the German town of Weimar. We have shows, cabarets, musical performances, often in some states of undress. Cultural turmoil. People are uncertain as to the new mores, the new expectations. Political turmoil. There's a new government every few months, if not every couple years, and this is compounded by economic turmoil, pictured here on the right, known as hyperinflation. Germany, as you know, has war debts that they have to pay back from the Treaty of Versailles after World War I. Well, the problem is because they keep changing governments, there's no stability. And so each government starts printing more and more money to pay off the debts and to pay their workers. Printing some money is a good thing. Printing too much money leads to inflation because people realize, oh, there's more and more money, and therefore each piece of money is worth a little less. And so the price of goods starts creeping up. Some inflation is natural and good. It spurs the overall growth of the economy. Germany in the 20s had what is known as hyperinflation. That's printing more and more money so that each piece of money is worth less and less. Here's a picture of a woman burning money because it was cheaper to burn the basically worthless paper than go buy wood. That's how little value it had. People would use it to wallpaper their houses. People would get paid, take their paycheck to the bank, cash it, get the vast amount of paper money in a wheelbarrow, and then wheel it down to the grocery store and buy things as quickly as they could because prices kept going up and up and up. So all of this is very tumultuous. There's, unemployment, there's hyperinflation, there's cultural, there's changes abounding, and this is all happening in the midst, as we know, coming up in 1929 of the Great Depression. This leads to, as you can see here on the chart, here's the period of the worst of the hyperinflation. They do get it under control. And here's decent levels of unemployment, right? 8%, 9%. This is fine. With the stock market crash right here, it starts going up and up and up. And you can see as unemployment increases, so does the percentage of the vote given to the Nazi party, right? Hitler does it. He does attempt a coup earlier in the decade, but he ends up in jail. This is a rather nice jail. He takes the time to write his autobiography, Mein Kampf, or My Struggle, where he lays out his struggles with the state and with life, and he lays out a plan that he follows pretty much exactly as he said he would. He borrows a lot of his ideas on eugenics, how to control the human population to get the best humans possible from America, actually, and our ideas of Jim Crow. And he says that these same ideas ought to and must be applied to Germany to have a strong gene pool to grow and to have a strong German nation. By 1931, 5.5 million people are unemployed. They stage a vote, and many people vote in favor of the Nazis, who claim that they can and will save Germany. The German government allows Hitler to become chancellor in January of 1933. He passes the Enabling Act to basically give him a lot of powers to allow him to put the country back on track. Somebody, Nazis, burned down the building of government, They blame it on the communists. They give Hitler more emergency powers, and he becomes dictator. He believes that there had to be a strong Aryan race, or a sort of white northern European race, right? Blonde haired, blue eyed, this sort of classic idea. Of course, he had neither blonde hair nor blue eyes, and he's not very tall or very strong, but this is his ideal. He also blames the Jews for all the economic issues. Jewish bankers in America, in Germany, in Europe, and he starts using Jews as a scapegoat, blaming them for all of the problems dating back to the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I. He has the SS, these sort of German Nazi black uniform, very rigorously trained squadron of basically enforcers. These are the police who are tracking down all of the opposition. The SS was under the control of Heinrich Himmler and spread terror and the crucial Nazi ideology, in part by calling Hitler the Führer, or the leader. His economic policy does have some benefits. From 1930 to 1937, economic unemployment dropped from 5 million to only 500,000. You can also see new laws being passed to terminate the Jews, laws called the Nuremberg Laws that limit Jews to only a few jobs and occupations, that explain who can and cannot get married and have kids, and that make Jews, have a Star of David label on them at all times. This is also promoted through propaganda through his propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, who has marches and speeches and movies and rallies and, of course, posters about the evil Jew, strong young German student. Look at these kids who love Hitler. And, of course, giant marches and banners and rallies and buildings. You can say what you will, and we will say a lot about Hitler and the Nazis, but they had very good branding. On that note, to be continued.